think I'm someone else. Lately, just need some help. Lately, I'm not myself. Take advantage of your life and everything you've got. Take advantage of your mind and every single thought. You prove your innocence. You don't deserve this. You take advantage of your life. Everything you said to me, promises I kept for free. Every lie you told me to my face. I can't take the pain. Maybe I'm not myself. I think I'm someone and I can't make a change. Maybe just need some help. I'm not myself. I can't take the pain. You take advantage of your past and everything you know, and everything will never last. You have to let them go. You prove your innocence. You don't deserve this. You take advantage of your past. Everything you said to me, promises I kept for free. Every lie you told me to my
welcome back to Small Town Loud Music, and today we are on to episode 4 with Never Better. This video project that I'm working on is mostly just for folks who are hanging around and like to reminisce about, the time that we were actually out there playing this music, but also like some people who might be getting into music or thinking about it, or just people who like to see what other people are up to. Awesome. Check it out. Some good shit coming.
Chad Quirk, and I played guitar and sang. But a lot of us played guitar and sang.
My name is Zer0, and in Never Better, I played the drums.
I'm Ben Deho. I played guitar in Never Better.
Just to give you guys a heads up, Mike played guitar in this band. You'll not be hearing from him if you're wondering where he's at. He just never liked the idea of being in the spotlight, and he remains as anonymous as he can. Loves to play music, and it was always fun working with Mike, and I am looking forward to working with Mike again. But he never wanted to be center stage, and when he did, it was just because he had a song that he wanted to see played right, I assume, and he had something to say and he wanted to say it, but he didn't really want to be in the forefront of the show.
Lately, so that was a song that Mike and I had written together when I had lived with Bart and his girlfriend at the time in their house. And it was a long night of us doing stuff we shouldn't be doing, and we were up all night. And at that time, I was going through my own things with like a divorce, which is why I moved to Reno. And Mike was going through his own things at that time, being a young lad. And I essentially had some chords strung together for like a chorus. Then I believe Mike had strung together some chords for the main verse that were kind of heavy and crunchy. And I think I had wrote a verse out, and Mike had wrote a verse out, and I think we did the chorus together, but I can't remember exactly for sure. But it was a cool song because it came out with my songwriting personality in it, and then Mike's songwriting personality in it. And if you listen to it, the song almost sounds like an argument of perspectives, at the time. So it came out pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree. That's been brought up several times before about like the blending, like when we would write songs together, and like you and Mike were like the opposite poles, so that was a super interesting collaboration there.
Yeah.
So the Never Better demo was recorded with this guy named Tom Gordon, and it's actually probably the best experience I've had with the method of recording of tracking drums first and then going back and doing guitars and bass and then going back and doing vocals and putting it all into a metronome. That is typically not my go-to, but this recording came out really good. I remember this recording was quite a process. We were practicing about 6 songs, and then Tom Gordon actually came out to the house to listen to each of the songs and then advised us which ones he thought were our best options. If I remember right, we did kind of make the stipulation with him. We had 2 songs that were a little heavier, and he didn't choose either of them, and we were kind of like, whoa, no, we want that heavy end in there. And so which one of those 2 do you like? As far as once we actually got to the studio, it was just play it again and play it again and play it again and play it again. He has a really good ear for anything that's just slightly off. So there would be times he would talk back to me through the headphones and be like, "Hey, I'm not even going to tell you what you did wrong. Just play it again." And it was, I could say that it was not the most painless process I've ever gone through with recording, but I'm happy with how that recording turned out. I think it's a great recording.
That was a good combined song between Mike and Chad, and all of the songs were kind of unique as I was listening to them. I remember many, many times of the songs being practiced over and over again, and just kind of some of the unique aspects that everybody brought to the table through practices and even the shows and stuff like that.
With the song Lately specifically, I remember it was written by my brother and my cousin Chad. I remember when they first wrote it, it was like we were hearing it all night. They were staying at a house that I was staying at with my girlfriend at the time, and the night they wrote it, they played it into the wee hours of the morning. I remember hammering it out, and it was definitely one of the more favorite tracks out of the set list.
Never better. Oh my gosh, never better. Lately I'm not myself. That song, listen, that song had to be practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced a million times before it could be recorded. And I happened to be in the next room with hours and hours of starting that song and stopping that song and starting that song and stopping that song. So you know what? I don't really miss that song. It's a good song, but I just don't miss it.
So yeah, we had to practice these songs. Like I said earlier, it was 6 songs originally, but we had to practice these songs a lot because the dude that we were gonna record with, Tom Gordon, at least at the time, cost a lot. So the fewer mistakes we made, the more likely we were going to be able to afford to make the recording. So yeah, we practiced the hell out of those songs for days and days and days. And yeah, this band, other bands, whoever, whatever music I'm playing, I've invited people, they're welcome to come with me to practice, but understand that practice is not a show. It is not like the entertainment part of things. You're gonna hear a lot of mistakes getting worked through. If there's new songs being written, you might just hear a part of a song being played for half an hour. Whatever it takes to get, lyrics on page or rhythms right or transitions correct. And yeah, like if you're regularly coming to practices, like it can be kind of fun, and luckily we're loud enough that if we have multiple guests, they can just kind of talk amongst themselves and have a good time, even if we are repeating something 100 times. But yeah, it's a different thing to be at practice.
And listening to the song Lately, as far as memories of that song go, I remember many, many times of it being practiced, and especially about around the time it was written. It was a very, very good song, and even at this point, 20 or more years later, I still can relate to it in a lot of ways because it just has this, kind of feeling to it of we've all kind of been there to where we just haven't felt ourselves and feel like somebody different than who we actually are.
I guess first of all, one of the things that we didn't really bullshit about was, like, I'm putting Mortheo as the first one because that's the first one I performed with, but really it was technically in Lucid
Yeah.
When we were just starting out, which would later kind of become Never Better.
Right, yeah. I recall that.
We were just like on the boombox.
Those are some of my favorite recordings, yeah, is that the old boombox, learning power chords for the first time, you know. A snare and a crash. Right?
Gotta tell them, man. I mean.
Snare and a crash, that's all it was. Yeah, Grandpa had given me my first guitar, that Orlando. Well, it wasn't even really considered an Orlando. He kind of Frankensteined it out of a bunch of shit that he went yard sailing with. And little tube amp, the Frankenstein electric guitar. Mike had a bass. You had a snare and a crash. So
Yeah.
it was basically like presidents of the United States of America.
I remember I also had like it sounded kind of like a bass drum, but it was actually like a actual like leather top like tom,
Yeah, like a floor tom.
like a
type
tribal kind of.
Yeah. Well, we all built a bonnet from that, but yeah, that was technically the first. Yeah.
No.
You know, 2 chord progressions with a change. You know.
Yeah. And then I remember I finally got a drum set, and like it was on at that point, and people were pissed because they had to haul me around with this fucking drum set to
Yeah.
Klamath Falls at Chad's house, or
Yeah.
because I was still just a young teenager at that point.
That was my favorite spot to jam though, is when on the house there that Grandpa had at the time, right? Is right by Will's, is the dog's kennel, the dog's play.
Oh yeah, out on the back porch.
We were unfucked with for hours upon hours, so there was a lot of cutting your teeth and learning what the fuck you were doing freely. Yeah. I mean, if we had the foresight to just play some acoustic guitars instead of power chords, we'd be right ahead of the curve. We'd be perfect for hipster music.
We were before our time, huh?
We had the potential, but we dropped the ball, so it would have been the perfect sound for the hipster stuff that comes out now. That's just a big kick drum and a snare and a splash, right? Some folk music, yeah.
I would say we all had our different fortes and Never Better, you know. I would say you were always very good at having very catchy, interesting lyrics, right? And just very, very simple, compounded chord structures that would stick in your head. And Mike was a kid prodigy with everything he did, you know. He's a metal prodigy, and he got a lot of anger out in his songwriting, and it came out intense and beautiful all the time, you know. Bart was what I would call our mushroom influence. Like, his stuff was always so unique. Like, I loved Bart's songs because you never knew what the hell you were going to get out of it and how it was going to come out. It could be funny, it could be melodic, it could be hard, and it could sound like acid music, you know, or it could be all those things in one. My stuff always tend to be like kind of more melodic, you know, like I was into the grunge scene, but I was more like Nirvana based and Everclear based and Smashing Pumpkins based. And I grew up listening to a lot of 80s music, you know. So I was always very structured with melodies and stuff like that. And it wasn't until later when I got like more heavy metal influence that the sound of my songs would start to change a little bit, you know. But every time we worked with a different individual, those attributes in the songs would come out, like in Lately, you know. Or if we were adding pieces to, like, a lot of times someone would have a song and we would just add pieces to it, either on the guitar or make suggestions vocally. Like, usually every one of us was so ownership over our actual songs that we wrote that we didn't really mess with each other's lyrics or melodies in the lyrics, you know. We all kind of wanted to own our own piece of that, you know. But as far as guitars, we were willing to say, yeah, add what you want at guitar there. So even in guitars, it would come out different. You know, we all had our different versions of what we do on that. But yeah, each piece would always. It was that was the beautiful thing about Never Better. In a weird way, it was kind of like a grunge version of the, you know, never got there like the Beatles, but it would have been interesting if it kept going.
Yeah, I definitely remember as far as like when we were recording things or even when we were just playing songs, we were always just like, if we have any chance of getting on the radio at all, it's going to be Chad that gets us there, because his songs were going to be the ones that people would allow. And then our hope was like, Chad will get us in the door, and then we can start presenting some of this other stuff and really get them to listen to it. But if we don't have that radio song to get us on, hell, even local radio, like, we didn't figure we had a shot at all. And yeah, I would agree. Like, I think we definitely like knew the scale of like where things were going to go. And I think Lately is really interesting because, like I said, Chad was going to be the one who was going to get us on the radio, and Mike was going to be the one who kept us from getting booed at like the heavy metal concerts, you know. And then me and Bart kind of fit within the middle of that, and like you said, we each had our own styles to it. And a lot of times people will say that they think that we sound sort of similar to each other, but most people I know that really, really pay attention to music, they see the difference. I definitely remember like collaborating on a few things as far as writing in Never Better, but for the most part, I kind of tried to back off of that. I just didn't really feel it was my role, you know, being back there on the drums. And I was doing songwriting in Morthio, so I didn't contribute a whole lot in that way to Never Better, but I did just like to do it for fun every once in a while and collaborate with you guys, and hopefully that'll be happening again.
Because we started playing so young, by that time we all sort of had a style developed too.
Mm-hmm.
And like, we'll probably talk about it later, but like when you showed up to play at Mowich, it wasn't necessarily songs that I knew, but I know Bart.
Yeah, exactly.
And I can feel when there's a change coming.
Yeah. We kind of like, because I think we learned our instruments together at such a young age, we picked up on those type of sensibilities, intuitions, you know. Yeah. I mean, I think it influenced the way we each individually write. You know, we may kind of have our own things that we went into or ventured into, but we all kind of carry that still, that something, right?
Right, that same origin, basically.
Right, yeah. We have some of the same tendencies, I think, in that respect.
Well, and our first instruments all probably came from the same guy.
Yeah, true story, yeah.
Like, the only reason that we even had stuff to play on was because Grandpa was nice enough to be like, oh, well, they can't afford to do it, or their parents can't afford it, so I'll just give him this one that I fixed up.
Yeah.
I found it broken at a yard sale, but
yeah,
it's good enough for a 12-year-old kid.
Yeah, that was really super interesting the way he'd do that, because he used to like make fiddles and stuff, and he was very musically inclined from that aspect of things. Like, obviously he didn't like punk rock and the stuff that we liked, but he was musically inclined. He played fiddle, he jammed with other folks that played bluegrass, and I think I almost liken it, I've said it in other interviews before, that I think like, because my parents used to just drop us off, like they couldn't handle the idea that we weren't in school long enough to, you know, So once summer hit, it was just like, drop them off in Oregon for like 3 months until I can put those little fuckers back in school again. And I think Grandpa almost at some point was just like, guys are fucking around. We'd be all over that his, like, he had like an acre of farm, or irrigation ditches, and I almost think that he was like, fuck with this for a while, man. Like, get out of my hair. Like, make use of this shit. So he Frankenstein. I wish I still had it. I don't have the guitar anymore. I'd be pissed off about why I don't have the guitar anymore. But it was in Orlando. I don't even know if that's a brand that still continues to make anything, but the headstock was Orlando. He changed the pegs out on it, the tuning pegs, through shit he found through yard sailing and stuff like that. And it was just this Frankenstein of the knock-offiest type of Fender that you could ever get. I still loved it though. Like,
Yeah.
it still sounded kind of mean.
My first guitar that I had in Morthio was an Epiphone, I think it was, that the neck had broken, which at most points, most people are going to say, you throw that guitar away. Like, it's done. But no, he put some rods in it and patched it up, and it worked good enough for heavy metal.
Right, yeah.
And
that's how inclined he was, is he was able to, like, you know... I mean, that's kind of how I remember him in general. I'm not a master builder, but I build that shit enough, right?
Yeah.
I ain't gonna go seek out permits to put an extension on my house, and I'm not a fucking carpenter, but looky there, there's a fucking extension on my house. That's kind of how the guy operated.
Yeah.
Well, that was another reason why I also really liked the idea of when you started to bring Bart and Chad and Mike up for the Never Better stuff.
Yeah.
And so we got a chance to see this, like, it was like, we have other bands that we think we're buddies with, like Wally Beamer and Preservatives and Exit 103, but in reality, they're not like band brothers like ours. And I think the combination of having, you know, your literal family in Never Better, and then our musical similarities, because Bart is very, you know, he has that same kind of musical influence as you do. It actually was my first ever band buddy experience. Like, we're band brothers, like, and we're, you know, we might not be in the same band, but we're going to be playing together, or touring together, or, you know, even, I remember even at one point in time, we thought about doing like a split music, like a split EP.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the band Never Better was performing and gigging and everything. I was with the band Morthio. So what would happen for us is Brian would talk to his cousin. They'd be like, hey, we're going to come in. We'd be like, we have a gig. They'd be like, okay, we'll come play. I guess they talk it out. By the time they get there, all I hear is, hey, cousins are coming into town. We're going to do 2 or 3 songs together at the gig that we have this weekend. Usually have a day, 2 days, maybe 3 sometimes.
Question is, would you be shocked to learn that Never Better often played with only 1 night of rehearsals before a show? And honestly, no, I would not be surprised, though I did not know that. The only reason why I wouldn't be surprised is because I also tried to start a band, and not even with that in mind, just getting people together in general to do anything has been quite a challenge that I've noticed, getting older. But practices and any of that kind of stuff when I was playing with music was hard, because everybody wanted and pretended to want to do music, but it was really challenging to get everybody together to practice and to do this. So honestly, I'm sure that getting a rehearsal right before a show is probably the best you probably could have hoped for. In which case, I'm glad though that everybody was still prepped and ready for it. You probably say probably not, probably got really hammered and shit-faced, but that's their coping mechanism, I'm sure.
No, not typically on stage with Never Better, no. I mean, I never drink or do any of that. Those guys, I mean, sometimes, but typically not. If we had a performance, I think it was when things were thrown together like they had to be, because we lived so far apart, couldn't really afford to have any sort of other hindrance going on.
I think that the concept of like going and playing shows with a band that we were like not only because we would support the other bands, but we never stand up in front for them.
Yeah, well, like, and more or less depending on who it was, but like for sure, like, Never Better had a similar sound. I think.
I agree.
And like even later on, when I was in Another Freak Accident, like Bart came up for Mowich one time, and we were practicing to just do a couple of songs early in the day for Mowich. And Dan heard Bart play. He's like, "You play weird like him."
Oh, Dan.
Bart's like, "There's a reason for that. Like, we grew up, we learned it together. Like, I've been playing since I was 12. Doesn't mean I was great,
but a lot of the influences came through, like Smashing Pumpkins and Local H and Silverchair and all these like stuff that I like would never have heard of prior to this.
Right.
Because I was more into punk rock, Pennywise, Rancid, No Effect stuff, and then you're like, hey, here, let me show you some of this.
Some would argue that Morthio and Never Better had a similar sound. I don't believe so. I think Morthio was a sound of its own, and Never Better was like 4 different bands. You had Never Better was Brian's part, Chad's part, Bart's part, and Mike's part. And honestly, I don't think they all went together sometimes. Sometimes the songs were just way too different depending on who wrote them.
It's actually kind of interesting to me because, like, I get some people who are, like, on that same page with you that are like, it was being pulled too many different directions. And then I get other people that are just like, no, the variety that created made it, like, better than any other thing. Like, so, like, I don't know. I guess that's just a taste. But, yeah, I can see how, that would turn people one way or the other. But I think that's just what it was.
When it comes to the multiple styles, that's something that actually made these bands really great.
This is a really, really cool combination that there still isn't a lot that does that kind of a thing.
No, not a ton. Honestly, I think the kind of music that Morthio and Never Better played was pretty unique in that way.
Agreed.
And Never Better was kind of a strange thing. Like, Brenna, when she was commenting on it, was like, in Morthio, you guys had one solid direction, basically, that you were headed with it. In Never Better, you had 4 songwriters that weren't necessarily going in the same direction with it. And she's like, and it made it kind of mixed up. And whether people did or didn't like that, like, that's up to your taste. But
that's a good point, actually. I didn't think about it that way.
Yeah, because if you take, like, a Chad song and compare it to a Mike song.
That is true. That is very true. And compare it to a Bart song.
Yeah. But then, like, on that little 3-song demo, there's one that Chad and Mike did together.
Yeah.
So, like, it's interesting to see how they weave in and out of each other on that.
Right. Well, even in listening to Quiz Boy, like, you can hear that like, you have Quiz Boy as Bart's main thing. It's got that kind of same direction that Morthio did, because Morthio was one guy writing and 3 dudes stoked as hell on the writing and like backing it and like, let's see what we can do for it.
At the time that you guys were doing that, I was too young to go into any of the clubs, so I kind of got the shaft on that one. Didn't go to a lot of the shows, again, because I was too young. So a lot of what I have of memories of you guys is, hanging out with Mike and, hanging out with you, Bart and Chad and Mike, and, watching you guys jam. And I can remember the first time I heard the song Lately. It was an acoustic, and it was Mike and Bart. And this was like before all that.
Yeah, I remember I went to a show in Millside Park. I think your cousin's band came up from Reno, Never Better. And for me, I thought, and you guys, Morthio played, Never Better played. You guys were great. For being, high school age, I was Stoked.
I also remember, yeah, it would be, our parents or the grandparents that would have to put up with hauling us around with all this equipment and stuff too, when on the rare occasions that we did get together. And I remember we had played a show in Myrtle Creek and it went really well, and people were buzzing about it at school. And one of the guys from the other bands came up to me and he's like, "Hey, I'm putting this show together and I'm, trying to get people to go, and people are saying, they're going to show up if Never Better's there, because either, they heard Never Better that first time and they wanted to hear it again, or they heard about Never Better showing up and they missed it, and that's what was going to make them go the extra mile to come to this show." So I get on the phone with those guys and I'm like, "They're asking for you. I don't know that we can actually make this happen." And they put it together. It was a little later on and we were a little older, and I think Ben and Chad were established enough that they were able to actually make that happen a little more. They had, some travel money. They were both able to drive equipment. It wasn't parents or grandparents that had to haul us to this thing. So they made that happen, and it made a big noise like one or two times. And so 25 years later, most of the people that I talk to about Never Better don't remember Never Better. But it's interesting to me that at that time it made such an impact on people that people were deciding whether to go to the show or not, depending on whether Never Better was going to be there. It cracks me up how just that small frame of time, it was that big of a deal.
It's a massive amount of sound. Massive, having the two drummers, having the dueling basses, having three guitars going off, And the major fun for me was everybody looked over at me at that time because I was able to play guitar, so I got to play these really cool solos to a massive wall of sound. That to me was one of the funnest things. I love doing the collaborations. I basically just get to follow along and then let her rip. So, and be free about it and had fun. Some of the best times I remember was both bands coming together and having the strobe lights on. The one gig that we did in Myrtle Creek at the half show, where we had the smoke machine, we had the strobe lights, we had the green lights, we had all kinds of stuff going. If I'm going to talk about favorite gigs and stuff, and this happens to be with the collaboration, that was one of my favorite gigs. We were a little bit older, I think 17 and 18 when we did this one. So much fun. Somebody's got a video out there. Hopefully I get, at some point, somebody posts up a copy of it or sends me a copy of it. I mean, I miss some of those gigs. Some of those gigs were really, really good.
Yeah, I remember when we did those collaborations, we had two different songs that we did that with. And the first one was Morthio and Never Better. And the second one also included a guy from Paranos. And it was probably just way more insanity than we needed, but it was just a really cool finale. And it would be okay, you're going to have certain folks that we're putting on just the main rhythm, keep driving that thing home, because there's so much noise going on that it's really easy for it to get muddy and for people to not know where the song is really going. But it also gave people a little bit of freedom to do some weird shit in the middle of it too. So as long as, that main backbone was covered, and some of us would have that covered, the other folks would move on to something else. And since there were a number of us who could play a variety of instruments, you know, it would be X and it would be Mike playing drums, and you know, we'd have 2 bass players going, we'd have, what was it, 3 or 4 guitars going, 2 vocalists. I believe when it was just Never Better, it was, you know, me and Mike both doing vocals, and I believe when it was Paranos, that was when Mike jumped back onto drums. But no, it was a really good time, and it was like the whole show, people had been built up and built up and built up, and then just blew the lid off the whole fucking thing with, you know, multiple bands getting together and doing those songs.
No, sound check back then was you sent somebody to stand out in front of it all.
Can you hear that shit?
Can you hear everything?
Yeah, I hear that shit. All right.
One more awesome memory. Well, not awesome. I believe it was at a community center show, and I believe I let Toby borrow my double bass drum pedal. His broke or something. I let him borrow it for the show. So he uses it for the show. They play awesome. End of the show, I walk up behind Toby's drum set, grab my double bass pedal, and start walking off. It was mine. Needed to load it up. Apparently, Morthio had one of their friends there that had a taser for like security reasons. Didn't know that that was my double bass pedal, and thought I was stealing it. Long story short, I almost got tased for my own double bass pedal. And I think it was Brian that like seen him and was like, whoa, 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 whoa. That's his. Chill. But I had no idea. And I think it was not even that night I even knew about it. I think it was after the fact, like days after. But yeah, that was crazy.
Oh my God, I'm glad you brought that one up, man. I almost forgot about that shit. That was not just some passerby that was there with us in Morthio. That I won't say which member of Never Better, but that was a member of Never Better. Thought that you were stealing the double bass pedal and was not having that shit. And luckily he checked with me before he just zapped you. Cause no, man. I remember you just had this fucking shocked look on your face, like, what the fuck just almost happened to me? And that was savage motherfuckers from Never Better, and I'm sorry. But I mean, if it does make you feel any better, they also would have tased anybody who tried to steal your double bass pedal from you. None of your shit was gonna get stolen that night. None of anybody's shit was gonna get stolen that night if anybody happened to see. Cause, yeah. God. Yeah, I'm very glad. I am so glad that worked out the way it did and nothing bad happened to you. I would have felt guilty for the rest of my fucking life if you had gotten tased for your own double bass pedal.
Describe the financial challenges that Never Better had for getting equipment. We were just broke as fuck. So, tube amps, shit that you could carry easily, store easily. Oftentimes you'd get in projects and we'd, when the project would fizzle out and shit would get swapped, you'd lose some equipment, you'd gain some equipment from other places. I remember how I ended up with drum sets on a couple different occasions. worked a lot of jobs. I worked to get the PA system. I think I still use to this day that Mackie right there. I was working like 3 jobs at the same time. I was rolling dope, Round Table Pizza, working at Walmart at nights, and then in between all that, another one.
Never Better in general, to this day, I look back at those days as some of the best days of my life, you know. We all had nothing to lose and a deep passion for what it is we were doing, you know. We would constantly, if we had downtime, we had a guitar in our hands, you know. Like most other bands I played with, it always felt like work to get them together to just jam or play music or to practice stuff. With Never Better, you never had to convince someone to practice or to play, you know, like you know, and we were willing to sacrifice everything we had in our life to have that experience, you know, even though it didn't work out, you know. Like it's one of those things where I'm gonna look back the older I get and be like, I'm glad I did that even though it didn't work out, because I would never wanna, I wonder what would have happened scenario in my head, you know, later on down the road.
Absolutely, I feel the same way. Just like I don't have regrets because I tried everything I knew how to try, essentially, you know.
I wish we had YouTube back then. I can tell you that. Better recording mechanisms back then. I mean, we were doing everything on boombox tapes to whatever kind of 4-track we could piece together. And shit, back in those days, like, we were paying, like, we would save up $5,000 just to try to do 3 songs in a studio, you know. And we would plug that out the best to our abilities every time. But back in those days, finances were a problem to get your music recorded, you know. Yeah, I still say to this day, it would be great one day to go back and take all those songs we have that we were never able to afford to get on recordings and do them nowadays with the modern technology we have to be able to do it, you know. And obviously fine tune them, and we know a lot more than we did in those days now, and how to make it come out and sound better. It'd be great to redo all of it.
Yeah, man, for sure. I am really grateful for both Never Better, Morthio, any of the stuff that I've tried to, you know, quote unquote make it. And just in my life in general, like, just to be able to go forward and say, no, I really did try everything that I knew how to try and not have any regrets about it. It's like my goal with everything in life.
It's definitely cool. I mean, in this area, you know, everybody's in the country, and of course rap, probably some Limp Bizkit at the time. So to have a little bit of hard rock in the mix was, I thought, definitely pretty cool.
Hey, everybody. Again, thank you for taking the time to do these interviews and let me know what you thought about these old bands. Hopefully we'll see you on the next one.